In this video, you'll see exactly how solid wood is used differently in single-family homes, multifamily buildings, light commercial projects, decks, and accessory structures, and why the same piece of lumber can be perfect in one building and completely wrong in another. In next video, we'll break down species selection in a way most guides never do, comparing Douglas fir, southern yellow pine, SPF, hemfir, cedar, and even hardwoods, not by marketing claims, but by stiffness, moisture behavior, availability, and long-term performance. Let's start with sizing decision. Professionals do not ask, what is the smallest piece that will technically pass inspection? They ask, what size will behave well for decades? That difference in mindset explains almost every sizing decision that looks conservative to a beginner. Deeper members are chosen instead of wider ones. Larger posts are selected instead of minimum code sizes. Moisture-exposed areas are framed more generously than dry interior spaces. This is not overbuilding. It is failure avoidance. Professionals understand that wood movement, deflection, and vibration cause more complaints than outright collapse. Floors that bounce, walls that crack, doors that bind. These problems don't show up on inspection day, but they dominate the life of the building afterward. That's why experienced builders allocate material where behavior matters most. They upsize members in long spans, moisture-prone areas, and critical load paths. They rely on redundancy instead of pushing individual members to their limits. This logic also explains why professionals design buildings as systems rather than collections of parts. Lumber is selected not just for strength, but for how it interacts with adjacent materials, finishes, and connections over time. Once this approach is understood, lumber sizing stops looking arbitrary. It becomes a deliberate strategy. And that strategy changes depending on the type of building being constructed. Single-family residential construction is where solid wood dominates more than anywhere else, and not because it is cheap. It dominates because it balances strength, flexibility, construction speed, and tolerance for real-world job site conditions better than almost any alternative. In wall framing, most modern single-family homes use either 2x4 or 2x6 walls. 2x4 walls still appear in interior, non-load-bearing partitions, short spans, and older construction standards. They work, but they leave little margin for insulation, stiffness, or long-term movement. 2x6 walls are now preferred for exterior walls and many interior load-bearing walls. Professionals choose them because they provide greater resistance to lateral loads, allow deeper insulation cavities, and reduce drywall cracking as the structure dries and settles. The decision is rarely about strength alone. It is about performance after people move in. Floor systems in single-family homes commonly use solid wood joists when spans are moderate. 2x8 joists are used for short spans, 2x10 for medium spans, and 2x12 for longer spans. Professionals consistently favor deeper joists because depth controls deflection and vibration far more effectively than width. When a floor feels bouncy, the cause is almost always insufficient depth, not the wrong species. Beams and girders in single-family homes are often built from doubled or tripled dimensional lumber and supported by posts or bearing walls. Even when code allows smaller beams, professionals avoid undersizing. They know that deflection, not collapse, is what generates complaints. Exterior posts are typically 6x6 solid wood. 4x4 posts are avoided because they twist as they dry, carry less load, and perform poorly in moisture-exposed environments. A 6x6 post is chosen not because it sounds stronger, but because it remains stable. In single-family construction, solid wood works exceptionally well when its movement is expected. Its size is chosen conservatively, and its role in the system is clearly understood. As buildings grow taller and more complex, however, the rules change. Multifamily residential construction introduces constraints that single-family buildings rarely face. Loads accumulate, repetition amplifies movement, and small deflections that would be ignored in a single home quickly become serious problems. Solid wood is still used extensively, but it is used more conservatively and with tighter controls. Load-bearing walls in multifamily buildings are typically thicker and more carefully aligned. 2x6 framing is the minimum standard, and larger members are introduced where stacking loads increase. Professionals avoid pushing wood to its limits in these buildings because movement compounds across floors, and minor deflections become major finish and performance issues. Floor systems are also treated differently. Solid wood joists may still be used, but spans are reduced, spacing is tightened, and deflection limits are stricter. Where solid wood approaches its practical limits, builders transition to engineered wood, composite systems, or hybrid steel-wood solutions. This shift is not a matter of preference. It is driven by performance. Vibration, sound transmission, and cumulative shrinkage must be controlled far more tightly in multifamily construction. Professionals understand that the cost of correcting movement problems in multifamily buildings is high. Finishes are interconnected, units are stacked, and complaints multiply quickly. As a result, material choices favor predictability over tradition. Solid wood still plays a critical role, but only where its behavior can be reliably managed. As structures move beyond residential occupancy altogether, the strategy shifts again. Light commercial buildings sit right at the edge of where solid wood remains practical as a primary structural material. These are spaces like small offices, retail buildings, schools, and community facilities where loads increase, tolerances tighten, and expectations for long-term performance rise. In these buildings, solid wood is rarely used everywhere. It is used strategically. Professionals typically rely on solid wood for partition framing, secondary framing, and non-critical load paths. These are areas where flexibility, field adjustment, and construction speed still matter, and where some movement can be tolerated without compromising the building's performance. Primary structural systems often transition to engineered wood, steel, or reinforced concrete. The reason is not that solid wood lacks strength. It is that predictability becomes more valuable than flexibility. Floor vibration, ceiling cracking, door misalignment, and long-term deflection are less acceptable in commercial environments, especially where occupants expect consistency and durability. When solid wood is used in light commercial construction, it is intentionally oversized. Deflection is tightly controlled, redundancy is built in, and members are selected to behave conservatively under load. This reduces vibration complaints, minimizes finish damage, and limits maintenance issues over the life of the building. Professionals understand that pushing solid wood to its limits in commercial buildings creates problems that are difficult and expensive to fix later. As a result, material selection becomes a balance between practicality and restraint. The same logic becomes even more critical when wood is exposed directly to the environment. Exterior structures are where solid wood fails most often, not because it is weak, but because it is misunderstood. Decks, pergolas, porches, and exterior framing live in a world of constant moisture cycling. Rain, sun, humidity, and temperature changes all act on the wood at the same time. This environment exposes every mistake in sizing, detailing, and material selection. Professionals almost exclusively use 6x6 posts or larger for exterior structures. Moisture exposure causes uneven drying, and larger mass resists twisting and distortion far better than smaller sections. Surface checking is expected, but it is far less structurally significant in a larger post. Beams in exterior structures are typically doubled or tripled to by members and spaced to minimize unsupported length. Professionals avoid relying on minimum code beam sizes because decks rarely fail due to overload. They fail due to connection issues, moisture-induced movement, and long-term creep. Joists are also chosen conservatively. Deeper joists reduce bounce, limit sag, and improve the feel underfoot. Even when code allows smaller members, professionals upsize to reduce long-term deflection and minimize callbacks. The difference between a deck that feels solid for decades and one that feels loose within a few seasons is rarely strength. It is moisture behavior, connection detailing, and conservative sizing. Accessory structures face similar challenges, often with fewer controls. Accessory structures like garages, ADUs, and sheds are often under-designed by amateurs and deliberately upsized by professionals. That difference has nothing to do with fear and everything to do with exposure. These structures experience greater temperature swings, wider humidity variation, and more severe moisture cycling than conditioned living spaces. Many lack continuous climate control, and their framing dries and re-wets repeatedly over time. Professionals account for this by choosing solid wood members for durability rather than minimum capacity. Spacing is more conservative, posts are larger, and framing layouts anticipate movement instead of resisting it. This reduces warping, cracking, and long-term alignment problems. Solid wood remains ideal for accessory structures because it tolerates exposure better than many alternatives when sized appropriately. But it only performs well when its limitations are respected. At this point, we've covered where solid wood is used and how its size changes with context. The next layer of decision-making is species selection, where experience matters more than numbers on a table. Thanks for watching. If this was helpful, like the video and subscribe. More practical construction knowledge is coming very soon.